Okay, here is the XEP80-II. I powered on the Atari. It's the NUC. When it powers on, it gets power through the joystick port to the XEP80, and now you can see it up on the screen. So the XEP80-II itself, it is a small little compact board. I have it running through this HDMI to USB encoder so I can grab these videos that you'll see later on. But it's a nice little compact board. There it is. It is the same layout size as the NUC, so it will fit in the same case. I've got an extra case for a NUC, and as you see, I have to do a little bit of work. It should fit right in there with a couple mounting screws and making sure that the holes line up for it there. I just accidentally hit the button to swap it back, but you can move it back. But you can see it is the exact same size as the NUC itself. There's the NUC. A lot of wires coming out of it, so it's kind of a mess. But the video comes out of the Atari and into the XEP80 and then out through HDMI. There's the video out, traces through, and you can see in there I've got S-video, sound with RCA, and composite. That's an input into the XEP80. I'm going to just take it out of here because it keeps switching. There it's got the power from joystick port 2 into the XP80, and then what it does now is this little HDMI board here is the new piece, the magic that Mytek added that wasn't on the original. This basically will take input from the Atari, transcode it into HDMI, and give me HDMI output, not only for the 80 column, but just the regular 40 column Atari, which is what you're seeing right here. So this is straight out of the Atari through the HDMI, and it basically replaces my need for a retro tink anymore. Takes power, USB power in for the HDMI board. Again, the XEP80 itself gets power from the joystick port from the Atari, but the HDMI encoder needs power from USB. It fits right in there. You can has a button to do 720 and 1080. On my Samsung set there, the 1080 seems to work a lot better in the 80 column mode, which you can't see now. For the 40 column, it's pretty much the same thing. You can see there, 1080p, 60 hertz. So it's nice. And then there's the button, the main button at front, that switches between the 80 column mode and the 40 column mode. There's nothing using the handler right now, so it's just a black screen. Push it back, I get my regular Atari output. What I've noticed now, most of the times that have the handler in them, you'll see later, it just pops over automatically when it detects that the handler is being used, and I don't even have to push that button unless I don't want to go back to the 40 column mode. So that is the XEP80, and I'm going to go through a couple applications following this section of the video and show you how it works with both Atari Writer 80 and some terminal Bobterm. I'll connect to some BBSes, and I'll show you how quick and how nice and how clean the 80 column output is. This is Atari Writer starting right here, and I will cut over in a moment to the actual captured screen for a better picture. Okay, let's load up Atariwriter, FujiNet, and boot. So coming into Atariwriter, you can see the XEP80 just flipped automatically into its 80 column mode. I didn't have to do anything when it loaded. I guess picked up on the handler. Here we are in Atariwriter 80's, the XE version for the XEP80-II, the main menu. Device timeout there. I had mounted a second data drive on the FujiNet, but there's something wrong with that. Looking at the Atariwriter disk, I can see there's a README file. Let's load that at least. We can get some text on the screen without me having to type. Load that in, hit E to edit it, and it will pop up. It took me a second. I have not used Atari Writer 80, and I haven't used Atari Writer itself in a very long time. So here we are. Here's the file. It's the README from Mytek himself. He modified this version of Atari Writer to work, guaranteed it to work with his new XEP80. But you can see here, very fast refresh on this device. Very quick typing. Absolutely keeps up with me. There's a very interesting review of all the Atari writers where the versions are compared by Inverse Ataski. I will set a link to that in the notes about this. He goes through all the versions, and although the very original version of Atari Writer was quite slow, I think you could type ahead with it. The later versions, Plus, and certainly this 80-column version, were very fast. So I've got a problem with this second disk. I can't save it. I can't format it. But there's an easy way to fix that. I'm going to jump back in to my FujiNet and just create a new blank disk so I can be sure that I can save something here. So let's hop back in to FujiNet real quick. Alright, once in FujiNet, it's really easy. I go into my SD card, and new option lets me create a new disk, new blank disk. Give it a name. And I'll be conservative and make it 90K. Now, I had done this before and still had an issue formatting it in Atari Writer, so I'm going to go ahead and format this disk in MyDOS so I can be absolutely sure that I have a properly initialized floppy. So we jump back in. Okay, this time we are going to get it for sure. Let's get into DOS and format this. I brought up MyDOS and loaded it. I don't know why I went into basic, so finally with MyDOS now, let's format this guy. Get back into Atari Writer. Okay, here we are. Now I know I've got a known good blank floppy in disk 2. There should be nothing, but I've got 700 free sectors. Okay, finally. Now, what I'm going to do is pull up the README, make a small edit to it, and then save it. And then let's take a look at what else you can do with Atari Writer. And so here's the same README file. I'll just jump down to the bottom. Again, you can see how really fast this thing scrolls. I'm going to throw in some new text. The keyboard that I have on my Atari NUC is a PS2 keyboard, and it's a weird one. I don't like the feel of it all. It's slightly concave, I guess. So each of the four corners of the keyboards are just slightly raised, and it feels very weird typing. I like to have a nice flat keyboard. So all the errors you see here are just me typing on this unfamiliar keyboard, but it definitely keeps up almost. I mean, it's instantaneous. I'm amazed at how fast this is, especially in 80 columns. So put in some text here, and now let me finally come back and save it on my floppy, my virtual floppy. So here we go. Drive to, read new, and it's done. All right, there it is. All that work, and I've saved a disk now. What else? You can look at the settings, change all the settings, margins, the typical stuff that you're going to be able to do. I was going to see about spelling, but I forgot to mount the spelling disk. I need to come back in and do that. It is included on there. I just didn't mount it. Hopefully I could find it on D3. So that failed. What else should we do? Yeah. Why don't we try to see if we can print. And to print, we can go into another amazing feature of our FujiNet, and that is FujiNet also acts as a virtual printer. So yeah, I'm going to be able to get a printout from this Atari Writer and actually look at it. So back in FujiNet, if I go to the web configuration, hit the C button on that to find out what your IP address is. Look, there is an emulated or virtual printer. I can tell FujiNet to act like an Atari 1025, save it, and I could even change the port, and it's done. Now I've basically got an entire virtual printer that Atari Writer is going to be able to use, so let's use it. Jumping back in to Atari Writer, I am going to basically bring up my file and print it. Now, there's a couple features that you got with the new XEP80-II from Mytek, right? You got HDMI, it's fast, it's compact, but there's a couple things that you didn't get. The original one had a printer port on it, so it worked like a Centronics printer port. It also had a special graphical character mode. Those have been left out of the new version, basically because, as you're going to see, FujiNet does a great job of virtual printing, or maybe you have just a real printer. Anyways, okay, here we go. Having a little bit of issues loading it, but finally I got the right file name. So here is the new file. You can tell it is. There's the text that I had added, and so that's great. I'll put in one little line, and then let's try to print this and see what this looks like. I have never used the virtual printer feature of FujiNet. I'm not printing to the printer port on the XEP80, nope, because there is no such thing. I'll pick my printer. I set at Atari 1025. I'll print the whole document. I just need one copy. And okay, now on page 1, there is a shot of the original XEP with the printer port on back, no longer part of it. Okay, the FujiNet hopefully is doing something. Now that it's printed, how do we find out? How do we get our printout? And as you see, we have to get out of here. We're done printing. All right, thanks a lot, Atari Writer. Goodbye. We're going to jump back in to FujiNet, and clicking on the printer itself right there, click to download your current printout. Well, all right, I just printed something, so what happens? It's now clickable. And oh, I got a PDF, and look at that. PDF 1025 printout. I haven't printed out on the different printers, but I will do that maybe in a future video to take a look at it. But it's pretty cool, and I'm going to zoom in here because this definitely is an emulated dot matrix printer, and zooming in is going to show you exactly that, because you can see those little dots just like it was a real 1025. Pretty cool. So thanks FujiNet. The XEP80 definitely pairs up very nicely with the FujiNet in terms of if you're going to use this to manipulate some files and you want that old school look, you can get that as simple as a PDF ready to use on a more modern system. Next, we're going to take a look at using the FujiNet to call up some BBSes. Okay, let's load up Bobterm. Bobterm is one of the more favorited and useful terminal programs for the Atari 8-bit, and it has XEP80 driver. It's going to load here, and you'll see right away it loads the XEP handler and pops, boom, right over. And the XEP80-II has automatically switched over for me. There I am, AT, the FujiNet is there, emulating a modem for me, and hitting a BBS today is as easy as typing in its host and port after the ATDT command. So there's a lot of BBSes out there for the Atari and other systems. Check out Atari Age for it. I will use the basement. I've already logged in and created my account so far, so we don't have to go through the account creation. But you can see here, wants you to use ASCII. I hit the toggle button just then to go back to 40 column. That's how I need to use the start menu to get in and to configure Bobterm. It was already set up for a ASCII. So you can see, using the XEP80 and 80 column, it does support Atari ASCII. It's not the full support. You don't get the same experience in 40 column, but it does support the characters, and things pretty much look like they should. The nice part is that I've got a wider screen. The BBS, most of them will ask you how many columns and lines you have, and you can set those up already, so the BBS knows about it. Because this is an Atari BBS, you are going to see basically that most of the things are in 40 column, even though we have 80 columns. But clearly, right, that's because 99% of the Ataris are 40 column systems, and so that's what you're going to get. But it's interesting. You can see some things like this will support the full 80 columns. It's kind of hit or miss, and you can just play around with it. It's definitely an interesting experience, but it is nice and speedy and gives you a good sense of what you can do with this. Although, this isn't, unless you're going to go to a bulletin board system that normally would expect 80 columns, like something hosted on a PC or others, it doesn't make too much sense to experience it in this mode. Unfortunately, you can't not use it when you load the Bobterm with a handler, because it just is popping back into the 80 column mode on any input or typing. So I'd have to load the specific version of Bobterm that does not have the XEP handler if I wanted to just stay in the regular old Atari 40 column mode. But it's quick, and you can clearly see, it's quick and clear. Obviously, I'm limited at some point by the baud rate. I think most of these are connecting at 9600. That's what ends up happening, but they're definitely fast enough where it doesn't bog down or get too annoying. I'm going to jump over and take a look at Foxtez's BBS, which is, while a more simpler BBS, one that's not Atari specific, and so it will at least support 80 columns a little bit better. But I'm going to go and look around and check out some more BBS specific and see how it supports ANSI and the VT520 character sets to see other BBSs as I continue exploring. Okay, here is the main menu. For the basement, I'll do one last thing. Look at the system info for this, and then we will hop off, try another BBS. I think this is representative of the best of both worlds. You do get to use support for the ASCII, and even though you're not going to get the same experience, at least it doesn't look like garbage, if you like that view. And there we're signing out. Now I'll hop over to the Foxtez BBS real quick so we can get another little look at, again, a more generic BBS. It's run on a PC and not necessarily one on Atari, so it is not a ASCII. And once I'm connected, oh yeah, I need to switch over to ASCII and get out of it. So I toggle back over, hit start, and switch Bobterm into ASCII, and then start again. And I can just type, hit the keyboard, and it will pop me back over into 80 column mode automatically. And you'll see here in a second, it's going to ask me when I log in what my columns and rows are for my terminal. And you'll see in a moment when I read some messages that it fully utilizes the 80 columns pretty much most of the time. I forgot, it's not dumb, I guess. I could have put into VT520 and seen if anything special happens with Bobterm on that. I haven't. Oh yeah, I did VT52 and ASCII. Didn't seem to change anything in Bobterm too much. But here you go. You can see this one is definitely using all 80 columns. That's what it expects that a PC would have. You know, even in CGA mode, it's going to have 80 columns. And we'll go through a couple messages here just to give you a sense. It's a pretty basic BBS with just messages. It does have some trivia games on it too. I didn't try those, but I think I just jumped to a message. Yeah, and then I'll go over a couple of those again. This gives a nice view of the XEP80-II at its full 80 columns and how quick it is. You can jump back and you can see it's scrolling off the screen there. Here I was just trying to go into VT52 to see if it did anything, and I couldn't see any difference between the output, so I'm not sure if that really makes a difference, one or the other. But it's no doubt that, you know, if you're going to explore some BBSes with the FujiNet, having the XEP80 there and being able to go into 80 column mode if you're going into a non-Atari BBS is going to give you a much better experience on that BBS. If you are just going to limit yourself to some of the classic 8-bit Atari BBSs, obviously you're going to do just fine with the regular old 40 column video output of your Atari. So, you know, it definitely gives you more flexibility if you want to explore some of these other BBS services if you're into that sort of thing. And I will hop off here and then we will be done. I will show a video next, a small segment of trying to use the VT850 disk that was found. It was on Atari Age, and while it does support the XEP80 and went into the mode, it didn't properly work right, and I was never able to test it as like a terminal trying to SSH into something. Alright, here is loading this VT850 app. Cleared things on FujiNet. It seems to set up a RAM disk for the 130 because the Nook's got the extra RAM. Loads me into DOS 2.5, and I looked around and there is a file called VT850B1 XEP. It looks like the XEP handler, so let's load that and see what it does. That was the first thing I tried here. As you're going to see, it definitely loads the XEP handler and basically just pops everything over to XEP 80 column format. It loads, and here we are back in DOS, but through 80 column mode. So what else is there? I guess there is a COM, so I will run the 850B1 COM program. That certainly looks like it's going to be the next thing that we need to run, so let's try that. let's see what that does. Okay, so this is probably where things get wonky. I need to get an R handler. But it does load, it pulls itself in, and then basically just need D1 through D8. Select item or return for menu. And basically this is where it recycled through this no matter what I did. So I'm kind of stuck there. I haven't spent that much time looking at it, but it looks like I've got to create another disk with a R handler in it and load that up after I load the XEP handler. And I guess it's asking that it wants to have D1 through D8 available with disks. I'm not sure. I can try putting some blank disks and some of them for the FujiNet, but at this point this is as far as I've gotten with the program, but it will be interesting to see what it can do, because it's definitely loading and working with the XEP80. This might be a nice terminal program to go into some Unix systems and get support from there. So in a future video I will try to work with this and see if we can break something out. But for now, this is pretty much where we're at. Then I also did notice, you can see under that duplicate disk, there's a funny character got in there. So more investigation on this one in the future. Alright, the Retro Tink. Many people have it, many people love it. I do love mine, but I also love having an extra one now because I don't really need it. The XEP80-II, because of what Mytek has put on there with this HDMI encoder, I really think this does an excellent job at giving me the output that I need. There really is almost no difference that I can see between the two once you've got your Atari system dialed in correctly for the color output. So pop this over and you'll see. I'm not going to go through a lot here, just basically showing you hooking up. You know, I mean, they're very comparable. It needs USB power in, so does the XEP80-II. You got your HDMI out and your S-video in. You know, I really think that because of everything you get with XEP80, in addition to just HDMI upscaling the 80 columns, it is a great value for the cost, even for the fully assembled board of what you pay for the Retro Tink, which is just going to give you the straight up upscaling. There's always another use for it. I've got Atom computer behind me with a nice little FujiNet that's coming along, and I am now using that Retro Tink for my Atom. So it really does a good job as a full-featured video upscaler for your Atari, and it fits great with the Nook. You know, this picture is even going through this, you know, USB encoder too, and it's still a great picture, even going through that with almost no delays. I have some other videos I'll post separately where I went through a lot of demos running through the XEP80-II, so check the other videos in my channel for some of those longer running videos where I get a bunch of demos that I run up through the XEP80 to give you a sense of what the color output looks for them, especially the new NYC 2022 video assemblage that just came out from Atari Age. I've spent some time running through all of those through the XEP80, and I have that up as a separate video, so check that out if you're interested in seeing what it does in terms of graphical output. I hope you enjoyed this video, and stay tuned. I'll be bringing you some more as I continue to play with some of this stuff. Goodbye.